Well, all right, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Talking with Tarashuk Podcast. This is episode number 60. We are 5 away from my favorite number. I'm not going to tell you why it's my favorite number, but just so you know, 65 is my favorite number. Don't know who my special guest will be for 65, but that's going to be interesting. My guest today, though, is Russell Rhoads. Russell is a finance professional educator and with an expertise in derivatives and risk management. He is also the author of several books on finance and investing with a focus on options and volatility. I know what some of those words mean. He is most well known for his book, Trading VIX Derivatives, Trading and Hedging Strategies Using VIX Futures, Options, and Exchange-Traded Notes. A shorter title was taken. He is also a clinical associate professor at the Kelley School of Business at Indiana University. We're going to talk about college kids, how they're being educated and keeping up on the economy, whether they have high hopes or if they're screwed, and as well as ChatGPT and anything else that comes up in our conversation. Russell, just so you know, ChatGPT did help write a little bit of that introduction for me.
Is that the thing that you get when you put my name in? Because
it is.
I swear, I promise, because I'm pretty much an open book about everything. Someone else told me this. I didn't go in there and put my name in, but they sent it to me and I saw it, and it sounded it basically sounded like just the bios that had shown up on the websites of the different places that I've contributed to or, worked. So,
yeah, well, that's what it pulls from, right? It pulls from the internet and spits out information back from the internet, which we're going to talk about later. Also, we are matching sweaters. We are matching.
Oh, yes, we are. No, we're looking. If you can't be smart, look smart.
It was 80 degrees in Hoboken last week, but it's still sweater season in my book. So, Russell, thank you for doing this. You are a friend of Mike Wilkins.
I am a good friend of Mike Wilkins.
I didn't know you were friends until after me and him did our podcast.
I know. Small world.
So it's funny. It's funny how that works. Podcasting brings people together. I do consider Mike a good friend of mine now because he's been on the podcast twice, which is very interesting. So please, Russell, introduce yourself to the world and let people know who you are and what brings you here.
Okay. Well, so my name's Russell Rhoads, and I'm a friend of Mike Wilkins. No. So no, I may be your oldest guest ever. I think I might actually, I watched a few of your videos ahead of time. So I'm toward the end of my career instead of the beginning of my career. And I'm spending the end of my career teaching finance at the Kelley School of Business, which is an awful lot of fun. When I had the education part of my career that was more the professional education, I'd be going to events on behalf of one of the exchanges, and you got a bunch of grumpy old guys my age that have lost money in the markets and just want to show up and bitch about it. Now I've got the hope for the future in the classroom, as long as they're awake and not playing on their phones and stuff. So there's one or two students that just keep me going. And that's why I like being here. Before that, I was on the buy side for about 15, 20 years or so at a handful of hedge funds. Kind of made the transition into talking about the markets instead of acting in the markets when SIBO needed somebody to work in their education department. Seemed like a good, fun job. So I took that on and worked my way in this direction. What's kind of funny about that is I'm actually going back into the money management end of things in the next couple of weeks. It hasn't been publicly announced yet, but I'm going to continue to be a professor here, but I'm actually going to be managing some volatility related funds by the end of this year for an investment firm.
Oh, it all comes.
So I've made a big circle, and that's the first time I haven't said that out loud to anybody, but you and my wife and my teenage daughters who don't care.
It's great company. It's great company to be in. I now consider myself an official member of the Rhoads family. So I'm glad it comes full circle. Let's hope it's not goes too far. Oh my God, that's a giant ass cup. I love it. So
Buc-ee's, coffee in the morning and portable urinal in the evening.
Is that your mascot for the university?
No, this is a Southern truck stop place.
Okay, got it. Okay,
sorry.
I'll give it a Google. Okay, so I mentioned Mascot because I heard from a little bird that you were once a mascot for a minor league baseball team.
I was.
So I'm going to start there because I always like poking on people for their fun facts. Like actually, I'm thinking about it now. The oldest person on this podcast might have been Barry Soames, who is an author from Maine, and he was in clown college like way back in the day. So that was his fun fact. Like any fun facts,
Yeah.
people see what we can go down. So tell me about your time as a mascot for a minor league baseball team.
Well, I actually worked 5 summers, and that was one of the jobs. I was a bat boy. And this was the AA affiliate of the Expos. Tim Raines was on that team. Terry Francona was on that team.
Wow.
There are a couple of other big names that are escaping me right now, but those are the 2 that I bumped into Tim Raines and talked to him about it. I mean, God knows he didn't remember me, but it's just because he's around the White Sox. But yeah, I got to get to a game and get within earshot of Terry Francona and just try to get his attention for a second and go, hey, by the way, you and I were both on the Memphis Chicks. Then the next summer, they needed somebody to put on the big pink suit, and I volunteered. I got $25 a game. I got free beer at the end of the game in the locker room with the players. Even when I was a bat boy as well, they didn't really frown on 13 and 14-year-olds drinking back then. But I spent a season as blooper for the Memphis Chicks, which I don't know how blooper and I mean, I understand where the phrase comes from, but the Chicks were an Indian-based team. You think they may have gone that direction, but maybe they had enough foresight not to go in that direction. With
maybe
the Mascot.
a little too on the nose.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
I've never actually spoken to a mascot, but I've always had a few questions I've always wanted to ask. Because some mascots are just incredible, right? You try to talk to them, they don't actually talk to you because that's part of the job.
Yep.
Some of them take it very, very, very seriously. I remember the Billiken from was that St. Louis?
Yeah.
St. Louis Billiken came into work one day. I got a picture with it, and then ever since everyone thinks I went to St. Louis. But no, like this guy was like doing backflips in studio and doing these crazy stuff. And like I wanted to ask him, it's like, so when you take a picture with someone, right? Like if a little kid comes up, you're interacting, you do the wave, you take a picture. Do you smile under the head?
You know what? I've never thought about it before, but yeah, your
body language still transfers over.
Yeah, and I've done more recent mascot work. The reason that I go right off the bat was because for my kids' grade school, normally they'd have a teacher that would put on the bear suit for different events. And the kids would all try to guess what teacher it was. So to fool them, I started being the Lane School Bulldog. And when I would see my kids, they would know it's me, I'd get a big old grin on my face. So yeah, and that's why I reacted so quickly. You just automatically. If this were only audio instead of having video on, I think my face would look exactly the same as my expressions. So you can think of it like that.
Like you see Mickey Mouse or Goofy at Disney, right? And they're always like, hi. And it's like, are they going ha hoo ha ha? Are they just going?
Yeah,
like all sad face because it's 90 degrees and they're a fucking giant Mickey Mouse costume.
100 degrees at game time on the AstroTurf, and I'm wearing a big pink fuzzy suit.
The Expos. Shame the Expos aren't around anymore. Montreal Expos. They had great players. They had Clemens on the Blue Jays.
Charlie Lee,
Vlad Guerrero. Tony Gwynn, he's on the Padres. I can't remember.
Yeah, he was a Padre
on Expos right now. But the biggest one was Vlad Guerrero, and then now they're the Nationals. They moved there in 2005, from what I remember. So big baseball fan, Russell.
I have been off and on. Being with the minor league team, probably paid more attention to baseball than anything else growing up. It seems to have shifted to college. And maybe because I was at Loyola when they made their Final Four run, and now I'm at Indiana, which has a really good basketball team and plays football. But I have schools that I'm willing to pay attention to now, as opposed to maybe in the past. So I've kind of gone in that direction. I bore people to death and actually have people that I root for in golf, if you can imagine that. So Oklahoma State, where I just got my PhD, has a handful of alums that play on the PGA Tour, like Victor Hovland, who I just think he's probably a complete dick in person, but at least on camera and everything I've heard, he is just the nicest, most genuine guy on God's green earth. you know, and then Ricky Fowler also went to Oklahoma State. You know who he's married to?
I have no idea.
He's married. There's, there are always different, pictures of gorgeous girls that just kind of catch on forever and ever and ever.
Yep.
And there's one of a pole vaulter. That's actually his wife.
Oh, super cool.
Yeah, he's got a great job and he married very well.
I do know Ricky Fowler. I used to play golf, high school, and then as soon as I turned 18, it got too expensive to play. It was like $60 a round for like 18 holes, which honestly, not that bad of a deal, but when you're 18 and broke, you stop
That's
playing.
your budget, man.
Yeah, that's your budget, right? That's like a gallon of gas these days. That's a full tank of gas, depending on what car you drive. So how do you go from Mascot? Well, I guess tell me about Mascot to professor. Now, through your career, how did you end up becoming a professor or a clinical associate professor? First off, what is a clinical associate professor? And why the clinical?
Well, okay, there. You know
a doctorate.
You know what? Well, I do have my doctorate, but you don't have to be a clinical.
Okay.
You hear, everybody kind of knows what tenure is. You can be a tenure track professor. And generally a tenure track professor is somebody that would be an associate tenure track professor, which is the level I am in clinical, would probably be 40. And on the way to becoming a tenure track professor, and the reason I say they're 40 and I'm 55 at my point, all the experience that they've needed to get to the point of where they're getting really close to tenure is teaching and really academic research. To get to the point of being to really be a clinical professor at a good university, you need to maybe be known within your industry for whatever topic you're teaching. And I kind of built that one up, but it's a much easier thing if you actually have a PhD. So SIBO, when I was there working in the education department, they had a tuition reimbursement thing that kind of helped me work toward getting a PhD. But my intent behind getting the PhD was to end up working at a university. And even though I'm not a tenure track guy, they really like having that PhD because for accreditation purposes, a certain number of courses have to be taught by PhDs at universities. And then you can have some adjuncts and some other things. And for lack of a better way to put it, I don't count against that score, even though I'm a clinical type professor. So no, I found that I really liked interacting with college groups that came to the SIBO, and got invited to teach at a couple of other colleges, and then worked up to Loyola and decided this was going to be the end of the career. So that's kind of how I got there.
Oh, that makes sense. Just, wind down and give back pretty much.
Yeah. And I do feel like I got a former student at Loyola that I helped out an awful lot. Mom was a single mom from Poland. She lived with her mom. Her mom, was a Polish maid basically. And I kind of gave this person some guidance and help them out interviewing wise. And now they're almost making six figures at one of the exchanges.
Excellent.
I get more satisfaction out of that than anything I've ever done or, professionally.
Yeah.
I really like that, that give back.
Tarashuk is Polish. So it's always helpful. It's always good to hear you helping a fellow Polak. It's always good to hear. So what class do you teach specifically?
Okay.
What's the name of the class, and what is the curriculum look like, or the syllabus?
Well, I teach I teach both in the graduate school and the undergraduate school. And for undergrads, that'll be an easy lift because I just finished teaching that about an hour ago. It's kind of like the second level finance class that gets deeper into corporate finance, and then also talks about how to value bonds and value stocks. So a lot more practical information than they're getting in some of the earlier finance classes.
So it's like a little second tier.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
It's like I said, I've been at a handful of schools, and at Loyola, it was the three tiers were corporate, intermediate, and intermediate finance, and then investments. Here, investments the second one, but it's that's where we are in that order. I teach a graduate class in derivatives. which was one of the reasons I was brought over here. That is a lot more theoretical than you really need to get into in the real world. You don't necessarily really, if you're trading options, you don't necessarily have to know exactly how that price, how the Black-Scholes calculator calculates the price. In my class, you've got to know how that works. So, takes it a little bit deeper than you might need professionally for the derivative class.
Is it more lecture halls, like 50, 60, 70 kids, or is it more smaller classroom, 15, 20, 30?
My undergraduate classes are like, I think both of them are about 45.
Okay.
Some of the graduate classes that I teach have about 50 students in them each, but it's not like a big lecture hall. It's more just like a oversized classroom. That derivative class that I'll be teaching, I think I'm only going to have about a dozen students, which I'm looking forward to that.
I'm very jealous of that because growing up, even back as elementary school, it was 22 kids typically per class, starting around second, third grade. And next, second grade was 18 because I remember my teacher, Miss Sheehan, God bless her, the greatest teacher I've ever had in my life, was like complaining to the class, saying like, they're going to bump our kids up to 23 a class. And I go, that's awesome. More friends. Just blurting out 8 years old. And she goes, no, that's bad. Less learning. And I don't know why 20 years later that still sticks in my head. But it's so true because I think back at Hofstra, right? I went to Hofstra, Long Island, journalism school. Most of my classes were very small. It was maybe like in a classroom, a bunch of computers, in a square, 20 kids. And then some of the core classes you need to graduate because they want your money was about 60 kids in like a tiered lecture hall. But I definitely learned more in the small classroom, not because it was my major, but also because it was a smaller class. It's just easier to engage. The people. It's easier to have a relationship with the teacher. So from your perspective as a professor, what's the challenges and the differences between a 50 and 60 in a 12 student classroom?
Oh gosh, it's night and day. People don't like to ask questions in front of other people, and people are easily distracted. And it's easier to skip class if you're one of 60 as opposed to being one of 12.
Very true.
And I guess the other end of it, the people that show up for a smaller class like that are very specialized and are really interested in what you're going to be teaching. So it makes for a better experience for the teacher as well.
Probably easier to make lesson plans too.
Oh,
right?
yeah.
Right? Because if it's a lecture hall in 60 kids, it's just usually, because I'm thinking specifically, it was like ancient Greek literature, which was really cool because I love that stuff. And like the stories are really crazy, but it's just hard to read because it was written God knows how long ago. But he was just up at the top of class, just talking and talking and talking, asking discussion questions and trying to keep up and take notes. And it's easy to fall behind.
Yeah.
And with business, I think it's even worse because it's a lot of definitions and like, here's what this means and make your flashcards, that kind of like, so how do you what is the best way to be successful in your class?
The best way to be successful is just come to class, but write down the stuff that I say. If it's really important, I say, this will be on the test. I use that old line. And do the assignments, just keep up with the work. I'm a big proponent of recognizing effort, and if I have somebody that stumbles out of the box, and I don't necessarily grade on a curve, but let's say there's a class where 3 exams are almost the whole score. If somebody really flubs the first exam, but has a great comeback for the second and third period there, I'm gonna take that into consideration with respect to grading. So. Making sure that I see that you're putting forth some effort.
Well, I go back and forth with the grading scale, right? Because A's and B's are important. It is the one of the best ways to see if you actually know something, but it also doesn't prove you know something. Like I have forgotten more than I learned in my time in school. I've forgotten. I have probably learned more in class that I got C's in than I remember that class I got A's in. But so I think it should be up to the professor, right? If the effort's there, they're learning, they improve, drop the lowest test grades to help them get a job or keep their scholarship, God forbid.
Yeah.
That's definitely big. But as a professor, you do have to have that balance of, okay, here's your little grade, 'cause that's the way a system works. But there is ways to kind of skirt that and cut favors.
Well, I never go the opposite direction.
Right.
And that makes it much easier right there, because nobody's going to complain about getting bumps. Usually I ask people to keep it to themselves. I don't know if that works or not. But
kids talk, man. Especially boys. That gets right to the frat and be like, guess what Rhoads did?
Yeah. Oh yeah. No, and the adults, I mean, the MBA students do as well.
Mm-hmm.
They do group projects together and start talking about each other's classes and stuff. I'm well aware that they communicate maybe more than they should about what's going on in the class. So yeah, luckily I haven't had to learn that the hard way, where I say something that gets back around and gets me in trouble. I never say anything like that, but I do hear they talk, because I'll get questions. Do you really, this sounds kind of, do you really drive a Porsche? Well, yeah, it's 15 years old and got dents all in it. It's an SUV one, but yeah. Porsche. Where the hell did they hear that? I'm not talking about it. I mean, I guess it just did, but I'm not talking about it in class.
Oh, you never know, Russell. Well, I'm going to cut that clip specifically and make sure it goes everywhere.
It goes viral. I drive
hashtag Porsche.
I drive a Porsche that I think I could get $6,000 for.
Well, I drive a 2013 Nissan Altima. I could probably get a little more, only because it has 40,000 miles on it. So
there you go.
There's that. Let's stick to the students.
Yeah.
What careers are these kids going for? Like when they take your class, you're preparing them for what job?
Mostly corporate, mostly a finance job within a corporation, not
just
necessarily.
What we need in this country.
Not necessarily, to go into the investment industry. And that's kind of the nature of Indiana. Indiana's very much of a manufacturing area.
Yep.
The same students when I was in Loyola in Chicago, they were all going to go into investment or banking type jobs. But down here, because it's more, again, manufacturing and not so much, finance from the investment end, they're generally going into the corporate finance departments at really big companies.
Well, the world is becoming more and more corporate. When I say the world, I mean the United States, right? I would be shocked if you said these students are going to go into small businesses and start their own companies. I would just generally be shocked, because. Go ahead, please.
No. I had one, because I that's something that I do. I teach here at IU, but I also have a couple of outside consulting clients that are big financial firms. And they'll ask me, well, how did you, how could I do that? Because they see the independence and I guess they think it looks kind of cool. And I said, well, the only reason that those entities are working with me is because I've got, 30 years experience and I'm a known quantity to them. So it's not as easy as it looks. But yeah, there's still an entrepreneurial spirit out there. There is.
It's always going to be, right? Myself. Yeah, but here's the difference, I think. This could be a generational thing. Young people, and this is a good and a bad thing, are entrepreneurial out of necessity, right? Yeah. I can go from personal experience, right? I work a great job, 40 hours a week, pays me well. I have health insurance. It's expensive, but I got it. I got retirement. I got it. 40 years ago, even 30, 20 years ago, that would be enough to buy a house, have a kids, and retire young. Yeah. Not retire young, but retire at a decent age. And you'd be there your whole career. That's just not in the cards for young people anymore, which is a big reason I have this podcast, Entrepreneurial Spirit. Yeah. If I want a wife and kids and to get married and buy a house, I can't just rely on that one job. I need to have a podcast and try and make money this way and ask for donations when I hate asking for donations and stuff like that. So I shouldn't be surprised that there is an entrepreneurial spirit learning a business class to learn about business. I wish I took one in college. I didn't take any business classes, probably because they were hard. So do you see that a lot, the younger generation, and do they complain about that a lot? Like how much do your younger students complain about the world and the finances and how the student debt and all that works?
I don't hear much gripe. They haven't. I don't think the debt thing has hit them in the face yet, and there's probably this glimmer.
Ignorance is bliss.
And there's probably this glimmer in the back of their mind that it's something they're not going to have to deal with because it's going to get canceled. Which I don't.
It's not.
No. Yeah, I know.
We can have that conversation, but it's not.
It's a great talking point, but no, it's not. No, and they're getting jobs. Again, they're not, the investment industry is one that has been, experiencing some cuts. Tech has been experiencing some cuts, but, not, core manufacturing. And if anything, I'm stealing this number from one of the other professors, and he used this one at a presentation, but said Indiana is the only state in the U.S. that has more manufacturing employees than government employees.
Wow.
And I know. That just tells you that. And the point behind that is we're seeing manufacturing coming back, or trying to bring it back and bring more supply chain stuff going back. So, the middle of the country is actually doing very well. You wouldn't think that by looking at the Wall Street Journal, but I think the middle of the country is doing. It seems like we're doing pretty well.
Well, that's where the jobs are going to be. Right.
Yeah.
To Biden's credit, after COVID, he does want to bring jobs back, whereas previously it was just easier to ship them overseas because it's just cheaper labor and there's no laws over there compared to what we have over here. But we do need those jobs back, and the infrastructure is still there in Indiana, Illinois, Ohio, that Midwest part of the country. So yeah, it makes sense the jobs are going to be there, and at least for now, it's still relatively affordable.
Yeah. So kind of back to your question, you were asking, what do they gripe about? They're not griping about jobs. They're really not.
Well, that's good because you know what? They're in the right industry, right? I hung out with a lot of, I hung out with a few business people too, but people where it's just like, okay, college wasn't necessary here. Like I love having this conversation with people, especially in teaching in college professions or what have you, this education. Do you need to go to college? As I've said this before on this podcast plenty of times, as a journalism major, no. I would have learned way more in the newsroom at 18 than I did in the classroom at 20, right? Yeah. My job, live stream producer, I didn't learn that in college, 0. I learned it on the job, but also podcasting my own personal ventures was a big reason I stuck out. Now, your profession, business, that's where the jobs are. That's where the needs are. This country is run on Wall Street. So that makes sense that they wouldn't be so worried because they're smart and went to a job that they actually need college for.
Yeah. So I'll tell you what they're griping about. So, and this was kind of for the first time ever last Tuesday, I went out to happy hour with a handful of my former undergrads. These are ones that had graduated last year, and it was 9 guys, and oh my God, they just felt completely worthless within the world, really, relative to women. They're like, we're a dime a dozen to them these days. They keep getting affirmed by all this stuff on social media. I mean, they were just on a tear. You'd have thought that I was the 25-year-old and they were a bunch of grumpy 55-year-olds. But it's the social stuff. I really think it's the social stuff. They're I don't know if it's because they lost a couple of years where they couldn't really be normal social or what, but relationships and the social stuff is what I hear the most griping about.
Well, that's standard. If you find a teenager or a young 20s not complaining about girls, then he's probably gay, right? Or he's just not interested. And then, and if he is interested, he's complaining about guys. So love life in a college student. That's not news. So I'm glad that's still a thing. There is plenty to go into about, and also young women prefer stable men, which typically means they're older. And I think it was a study recently. I don't know who. I forget. Someone can fact check me. It was like 60% of young men under 28 are single, but it's 40% of women are single. It's like, well, how's that happen? Well, they're dating older guys.
Yeah.
So
my wife is 5 years younger than I am.
Sounds about right. My parents are 3 years apart. The biggest I have is my aunt and uncle. Well, I think it's 9 years, 9 or 11. So, the older you get, the less weird it is. So, just don't think about it. Hey, when he was a senior in high and senior in college, she was, I don't even know how old. Maybe middle school. If it's 11 years. But okay. So your students, they aren't worried about jobs, worried about women.
No.
Men are. So That's good, because April is Financial Literacy Month, so they must be pretty financially literate. You know, all the people who complain of, why don't they teach about this in high school? They must have been taught that somewhere, because here they are. Now, with the whole financial literacy argument, we need to teach this more in schools. How do you explain your students then? Because they seem to be pretty in it.
Well, they care about it.
Right.
You know what I mean? And they've gravitated toward, a pretty good school and a pretty difficult topic within a pretty good school, because they've had the interest in it. I always had an interest in it, probably going back to high school, actually reading Barron's and looking and drawing out charts and crap like that. I had been doing that a long time before I ever made it to college. So I gravitated toward the financial literacy. It didn't get pushed in my face. I think for the 99% that don't major in finance, there should be some sort of finance class that's like a life skills class. This is how much. This is a little story. I don't know why she's latched on this one, but my wife would always talk about what is the ultimate cost of a potato if you put it on a credit card and you don't finally pay it off for a year and a half.
Man, with the interest.
Yeah, no, I mean, it would, compound it. If it's $1, it would be about $1.25 a year from there. But, how much, how much you really paying for it, because you're putting it on a credit card.
Yeah. Well, credit's fake. Credit's not real. Yeah. Credit's made up. Yeah. So actually, on the podcast with Mike Wilkins, we had a whole thing about credit cards and how when credit cards really became huge, like inflation became huge because people decided spending money they don't have. And if you got rid of credit cards, inflation would probably just be gone because no one could afford anything, and prices would tumble down because no one could afford anything. I mean, the economy would collapse, but that might happen anyway. So what's
going to happen?
What's the outlook? Yeah, something's definitely going to happen. What's like the outlook of this next generation coming up? Are they hopeful for the markets? Are they in denial? Do they think we're currently in recession, like most people my age? Or
they do.
They do. So they see the writing on the wall. They're getting
jobs. Yeah, and I think they're getting that. Like, once again, I think they're getting that from the news.
Do they trust
some
the
things
news?
that you see.
Like, does a college kid, junior in college, studying finance and business, do they trust Jerome Powell and the Fed and what he's saying? Is he saying, like Jerome Powell said recently?
No, they don't.
They don't.
They don't.
And is that a good thing or a bad thing?
It's because they get their financial information from like Reddit and places like in chat boards and stuff, where you got the quacky people talking about Jerome. You're taking me down a different road on this one. A lot of what they hear is rumors from chat boards and things like that, and those are the guys that are majoring in finance because they think they're going to be the next Gordon Gekko or something like that. Yeah, which more power to them. They should be looking at the real world stuff. And I like one of them had a student yesterday like bring me a pretty intricate option spread that they had heard about and asked me what they thought the motivation was behind it. We spent like 45 minutes trying to dissect the trade. So there are some of them that are that deep into the weeds with all of this.
Well, Reddit forums can be, very, very good. Yeah. In terms of like, you could have gotten in the GameStop thing very early and the meme stocks. I wouldn't suggest it now, but I'm not a financial expert. Nope. Or they could have gotten into crypto, and if they got in too late, they lose everything. So those Reddit forums to me are both just as credible as the Fed. The Fed could be very, very right, or they could be completely wrong. So it doesn't really matter. But so. What would you suggest they get their information from?
Oh, Bloomberg TV.
That's a good answer.
I mean, several of the hosts on Bloomberg have their CFAs. Mm-hmm. These people actually do know what they're talking about. And I'm not to say that people on CNBC don't, but Bloomberg
I'll say they don't.
Well, Bloomberg, not all, I wouldn't say about all of them, but I don't watch nearly as much as I used to. But Bloomberg TV, these folks, have a deeper understanding of what they're talking about, but their audience has a deeper understanding of what they're talking about as well. So CNBC matches well with their audience, and Bloomberg matches well with professionals, and when I was trying to gauge this one back when I was at SIBO and I would go around and speak to CFA groups, and the reason I did this was CNBC was losing viewers and people were worried that people were not as interested in the markets. And I thought they were moving to Bloomberg, but Bloomberg doesn't subscribe to the Nielsen ratings. So we don't know if they are or not. So I would go to a CFA group and I say, just real quick, how many of you, business TV in the morning, Bloomberg, 80% of the people in the room. Right. So, you kind of want to be with the smart folks on that one.
Yeah. When it comes to any information, right? I like Bloomberg. Now they have their biases like anyone else does. They can be wrong about things like everyone else can. But typically, Bloomberg, I think, is a good source. But Bloomberg Financial, that's very interesting. So when you're teaching a class, I'm going to pivot here a little bit. When you're teaching a class, you have a syllabus, you got a game plan, then something, bam, Silicon Valley Bank happens, or bam, FTX happens. How much does that come up in your discussions at all?
Oh gosh, yeah.
Do you kind of just throw out a lesson plan and go, all right, let's talk about this Bankman fraud, or just go, it's like, all right, here's what the government's gonna do with bailing out the banks. Here's what that means, and do you have this discussion with them, and how do they react to that?
Well, so my MBA, it's kind of two different responses. The MBA students know that I do things professionally. I comment on the markets professionally, and they kind of respect my opinion. So, when the Silicon Valley Bank thing happened, a student emailed me and said, could you do a short presentation on Silicon Valley Bank for us so we can have a better understanding of it? So the MBA student asked me to do it, and I did. And that's great. Yeah, I take a lot of satisfaction from that. That I'd be the person they'd think of. And at the undergrad end, there were things that there were several things that matched up with stuff that was already in the classroom. So I would pull that in and talk about. I don't want to over technically on it, but to the core, what Silicon Valley Bank did was they had a duration mismatch where their deposits and what they were using those deposits for that were supposed to take care of those deposits just had a gigantic disconnect. And it's a great way to explain why what I'm talking about in the classroom right now is important.
Yeah, I had to go a deep dive into it. I should know these things, but I had to ask the question, what are bonds? Now, I know what they are. I know what they are now, but it's bonds, a term I always heard, but something I never actually knew or understood. So luckily, I have this podcast. I did think of you, Russell, but I think we already scheduled, and I needed something really quick. So I went with Steve Sosnick, which was excellent.
Oh, I love Steve.
Me and him did a very long podcast on the whole SVB bailout and the crash and what it meant, and it was right after it happened. So that was very, very exciting. I'm glad I got to actually talk to him. I got these access to these people. So like your student, I'm very glad he reached out to you to get access because they probably have questions. They want to know what's going on. What does this mean for them as students and as they enter the world? Did you get any pushback? When you say, here's what happens, here's how it happens. Do you get any I think that's bullshit, and here's why?
Not from what I think my students are. I can be very loud and boisterous, and I think they might be a bit intimidated by me, so they wouldn't push back too much. But I mentioned I was out with some of the students that I had recently graduated last week. One of them just kept, wanting to debate me on everything about the markets, and he had not been one of my students, and he was only a year out of school. So I do get pushback. I do get pushback from people a lot, but typically not from my undergraduates. The graduate students, I'll get some pushback from them about things sometimes.
Are they more capitalist? Are they more kind of social democrat? The flaws of capitalism change this? Are they more burn it down? Burn your underwear, down with the anarchy? Where do they kind of lean?
Oh, my graduate
I don't want to say
students?
politically, but politically.
Okay,
how woke are they?
You can be socially liberal and financially conservative. I'd say all of them are financially conservative. And then the social, it's the spectrum.
So they're bleeding heart capitalists?
Yeah.
Well, it's
So,
it's
I mean,
it's
and
tough.
the reason that they're doing what they're doing is to, because they want to move up the corporate ladder.
Right.
And
You got to play the game.
MBA from Kelly is going to help with that.
Yeah. Say, listen, I hate the game. I hate a lot of things about the game of capitalism, but that's the game. And you got to play by you can't change. Sometimes it's easier to play than it is to change the rules. So it would make sense to me too. Yeah. Like, yeah, these guys and gals are just going to play by the rules. And listen, you can hate the system, but that's the system we got.
It's the system we got. Yeah. It's the game, and if you want to go try to play the game somewhere else, I think the games are more difficult in other places than they are in the U.S.
So that is
we're not great, but we're definitely not the worst.
It is interesting though. So from this small case study of this year, X amount of students, like people in my generation, they want change, they want financial change, but they're not going into those they're not going into those industries to do those changes. It's easy to say for a teacher in middle school to say, "Oh, we need to change capitalism." It's not a thing to go and get your degree in it and actually go and change it. The people who are going to go into it is saying, "Hey, man, this might be bad, but it is what it is." Mm-hmm. So that's not very hopeful for someone who wants change, like a social democrat.
Yeah. No, the whole ESG movement has it's definitely moved what would be like the center for the financially conservative with respect to the social stuff.
All right, explain ESG. Let's kind of go down a little ESG rabbit hole, because I've heard some good things about ESG and some things. Oh, this is corporate pandering and bullshit kind of things about ESG.
My opinion. ESG, environmental, social, and governance investing. And normally when everybody hears ESG, you automatically think about the green stuff, but that's only a third of it. The governance part is the part that I teach a lot. And governance is basically that you've got your upper management doing things that are in the best interest of the shareholders as much as they possibly can. Or I would say all the time, but you got to give them a little bit of a mulligan in there at some point. And if they're not doing, if they're spending a couple $1 million on their wife's 40th birthday party of company money, that's not in the shareholders' best interest. And that's something that we refer to as agency issue, where they're supposed to be our agents. And that's what governance comes down to, is a company set up to where management should be doing the right thing all the time. Just having rules that they have to operate within, and how well have they done operating within that. So that's another third of it right there.
Right.
And
okay,
then
let's stick to governance.
Okay. But remind me, I want to talk about social.
Social. Okay. I also want to talk about social, because that's where I think a lot of the tomfoolery comes from. So when it comes to governance,
tomfoolery.
Like what exactly is governance? Is that just government and like?
No, governance.
Governance.
Like, governance. I'm trying to emphasize the second syllable.
So what exactly is governance?
Governance, it's management, but it's also the structure of a company that allows. I'll backtrack a little bit. A company is created
like a diverse board.
Yeah, that falls in the social.
That can fall under both though.
It can, but it does fall under social.
Okay.
So let's just say that a company is set up and management has no oversight whatsoever. There's no board of directors, which that's not how a company should be set up. Well, that is you get a low governance score on that. If you've got a board of directors that is diverse, but it's diverse in skills, where you've got, somebody that understands the financials, you've got somebody maybe that understands the legal that the company may encounter, and they are overseeing management properly on behalf of shareholders, that is strong governance. And part of it can just be the people and how they're behaving, but another part of it can just be how is the company, what are the company rules? Can the CEO just give himself a $10 million raise and nobody's going to object to it? So the process, I guess, is where I'm going, is the other part of governance.
Right. So it's literally how it's run and how secure it is.
Exactly.
Right. So
and how much confidence you have that you're not going to lose, that something from the governance end is not going to hurt your share value.
Okay. That makes sense. So it's always about the shareholders. So
it is.
So, ESG score, right? Environmental, that's mainly for the public, right? Social, that can be for the public too. governance that can also benefit the public. So this doesn't maybe make sense to me. And I could be completely off here. How can you have like ESG score, like a good ESG score, and say this is a good company for the public, but they still only care about their shareholders? Like,
well, that's where the governance score balances with the environmental and social.
Okay.
But doing governance wise, doing things that for the shareholder could be making sure that that our chief safety officer is always making sure that all of our offshore drill rigs will not tip over and cause a huge, huge financial liability and a big black eye for the company, which hurts the shareholder. Well, you want the shareholder's interest is aligned with not doing that environmental damage because management sucks.
Right, but those regulations also very expensive, which is also bad for the shareholder.
Oh yeah, no, absolutely. But that doesn't fall under governance. That's government.
Okay.
That's that. I know. I get what you're saying around that. But.
Yeah, like it's kind of hard. You can't focus on like the good of the public and the good of the shareholder. Those two never match up.
Well, that's it. When I was saying, let me backtrack for a second, and then we kind of took a left. When I was in, when I took finance classes back in the day, we were told that a public company was created to increase shareholder value.
Yep.
There's a period.
And a private company.
That's not it anymore.
And the private company is to benefit the public.
Yeah. No, it's a public company is created to increase shareholder value and do no harm. Please. We added that got added sometime in the last 30 years.
Please, companies do no harm. Come on.
Oh, that's what they're supposed to.
Who actually believes that though? Who goes, you know what? Yeah, these companies care about not doing harm. Come on, man.
It's balance, man.
No, it's not. Do no harm. Yeah. Companies care about not doing harm. Sure. Which company? My company.
I'm not gonna hurt anybody.
My company. I'm a one-man wrecking ball over here. You gonna tell me Raytheon cares about not doing harm? Their whole business model is doing harm.
Their job is doing harm. Yeah. No, you got to think that banks don't want to hurt. Never mind.
Yeah, all right. Okay, banks aren't going to do any harm. They're just going to gamble away your money, whether it's crypto where it's not real money or it's SVP where it's kind of real money.
Yeah, kind of your money.
Yeah, is Facebook going to do no harm when they sell your data? Hey, you can ban TikTok, but hey, TikTok can just buy it from Google and Facebook. Is that part of do no harm?
Oh, no, well, Facebook sells it to the Russians already.
Right.
Yeah,
right.
I know that.
Doesn't that do harm, or does that fall under government and not governance?
So, no, governance is different than government.
I know. Come on, Russell. You're not really convincing me that ESG isn't a scam. Come on, ESG is something.
Oh, no. I don't believe in ESG at all.
Amazing. Yeah,
I don't think that it is but my job as your money manager.
Yes.
Is really to try to meet your financial goals the best using the lowest risk that I possibly can. If you tell me, and then you can give me constraints. If you tell me that you don't want me to buy tobacco, then I don't do that.
Right.
That and that's where I feel like the ESG really should be coming from is the clients that say I don't want to invest in this industry anymore, or I don't want to invest in this company because they're a poor corporate citizen. That's not, I just don't see how we get to that point. And as a manager, I'm supposed to be helping you outperform. If only investing in ESG friendly company or high scoring companies has proven to underperform the market, which it kind of has, should I be doing that?
Yeah. And it's just like, well, okay, so who can qualify for an ESG score? I have a company, right? It's a local at-home business. Like, I can't qualify to get an ESG score.
Well, you probably could get a scoring agency if you really wanted to. I don't know what you would use it for. No, but public company, they're different rating agencies and they all look at everything differently. And this is another reason that I feel like ESG is not going anywhere for a while.
Yeah. You hit a term. Young people want to invest in companies they care about and they believe in and have a good Really?
Well,
they want to invest in
also
money.
young people want to move out of their parents' freaking house.
Oh, so glad I did that. Yeah.
I mean, they don't, they want to, they want to launch at some point.
And they don't want to work 2 or 3 jobs just to barely get by.
Right. So they figure it out very quickly.
Yeah. All right, let's go to the S in ESG. Let's go about the social.
Yeah. Social. See, that's where we're getting all twisted. And this is me, and I'm just freaking naive. I really, it's just a freaking weakness. So, the social stuff, when I heard that, I worked with I actually helped create some of the ESG indexes, doing a consulting job. And when we talked about the social part, corporate citizen, are you sponsoring, the local marathon? Do you do fundraisers for the children's hospital? Things like that. Good corporate citizen. Do you, encourage do you encourage your employees to volunteer and use company time to volunteer? Stuff like that. That's really what I thought of as social.
That sounds great.
Now what it's becoming is woke.
Yeah, what it's becoming is
it's woke.
You can correct me if I'm wrong here. Where in June, which is Pride Month, they changed their colors to rainbow. That raises their ESG score.
Probably does.
It does.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure people can fact check me on that, or like. Go ahead.
It's not that. It's the this and I don't know this much about it, but I know there's somebody that's transitioning that was doing a Nike sports bra.
Oh, I think I know of it. I don't know details, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think I just lost my thought on that one so badly. You have to backtrack and tell me what we were talking about. This is this is a concussion thing.
Social, and I know you had your head injury. You had social
like people are going, okay, did he really have a head injury?
No, he did have a head injury. Another reason why he pushed his podcast off a little bit because he had a big bruise on your face.
Yeah, no,
social ESG.
This still in person.
Yes.
Appearing in the Bud Light ad. I'll bet you that, that by a lot of rating agencies standards, that increased their social.
And see, I think that's really stupid. I think
I do too. And that's what social is becoming is, did you have the biggest float at the Pride Parade?
Yeah.
Which is great.
It's virtue signaling. It's virtue signaling.
Do something there, sponsor the Little League, do other corporate type things, and that should be part of the whole mix of what you do.
Yeah. Yeah, and let me be very clear. Bud Light advertising with a trans person, I don't care. I just don't care. If you care, you have a great life. If it bothers you that much, I want your life where I can have that problem where I care about trans people on a fucking Bud Light can. Now, there's so many other issues going on in the world. This is what people are mad about.
And you wonder why the rest of the world looks at us and just kind of snickers.
Yeah, I hate that it's a topic of conversation, but to the point of ESG, where it is relevant, it doesn't actually, the fact that raises your score doesn't do anything. It doesn't do anything.
No, it does. And if anything, it just makes companies pander.
Yes, it does. It's pandering, and it's virtue signaling, and it's hollow. And everyone knows it's hollow. Everyone knows it's hollow. It's like it's more hollow than when a government official does it.
Yeah.
So, okay, let's
so the subjectivity of the social part and the fact that one rating agency can tell you that Tesla is the best company in the world and another one can tell you it's ruining the earth.
Well,
there's no consensus on the ratings as well.
Let's go to the E, environmental. Yeah. So, electric cars. Electric cars are great. Don't use fossil fuels. Don't use gas. They use batteries and cobalt. You know what cobalt does? You know how they get cobalt out of the ground other than suffering in children? It ruins the environment.
Yeah. That's exactly where I was going with that.
That's the hypocrisy behind electric vehicles. If you want to save the environment, electric vehicles, don't use electric vehicles. That's arguably worse. Coal and gas is bad. But EVs, getting cobalt, the car is great. How you build the car is ruining the environment.
Yeah.
And crypto. Crypto also ruins the environment too, allegedly. So your students, as you go by this, are they aware of all these things, or do they kind of buy the narrative and go, this to play the game?
If I taught a marketing class, I'd probably have more insight into that because that's the kind of things they would talk about. And honestly, you have to be careful what you talk about in the classroom sometimes.
You don't want to get canceled, Russell.
Yeah, no, well, you just don't want to trip up and accidentally, I'm tripping over not talking about a specific story because it was another professor along those lines. But you can be very innocent and have no malice in things that you're saying, and you can get twisted around quite easily.
Of course.
And I have, and it has happened to me. It was just, I was joking around with somebody and, said, yeah, we could do that. Just don't give me any shit and everything will be fine. I was like, just kind of being friendly with him. And he responded and he goes, well, that goes both ways.
Uh-oh.
And then
accountability. Don't mention accountability.
But he reported me and said that that I had said something, that I'd said, don't give me a shit. But it was the whole context of the thing,
That's a damn
whole
shame.
context of the thing.
So, okay, young people, people in your generation love to say that people in my generation are going to ruin everything. And people in my generation love to say, hey, it's your generation who is ruining everything. So for someone who is teaching the next generation, how capable are their hands? And that goes for my hands too, these two hands right here. Are we going to pick up the torch and pick up where you left off? Are we going to start a new fire? Are we going to build a new village? Or are we screwed and just burn it all down?
Oh, no, we're not screwed. You guys are going to be fine. I have no concerns whatsoever. I've been teaching, people at the university level for almost a decade now. And I see enough people that give me hope that I don't worry about. I don't worry about the future at all.
Good. That's good. I do and I don't, right? Because the future is, well, okay, we'll define future. My future, I think my future is going to be just fine. It's a bit of a struggle. It's not a deep struggle, but it's a struggle. But you work hard, and I think I'll get through it. Now, the future of the country and the world, I can say it's screwed, but nothing I can do about it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? There's no point worrying about World War III, where I live, one, so close to New York City, and two, it's out of my hands. Yeah. You can only worry about things you can control.
Yeah. I said something negative. I don't feel like China's going to ever fully recover from the COVID thing. For a multitude of reasons. And I said that in a class with a Chinese national in the classroom, and they just popped right up. And it was like, oh, crap.
Oops.
But nothing came of that. But I worried about it. I really do. I worry about it sometimes.
Which it's just your opinion, right? In this country, you're allowed to have opinions for now.
For now.
For China, I think China's biggest problem is there's not enough people to replace the old generation because they had that.
They're a demographic time bomb.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
I mean, Japan too, right? I think Japan has a birthing problem, but China specifically, you can say China's gonna be a problem in 40. There might not be a China in 40 years. There's not enough people.
Organically, and when I mean by organically is just with the people in the borders at this very moment. We're in the same situation. It's not as bad. But the big difference between us in Japan and China is we actually do allow immigration. So we can continue to pull in from outside of the United States and maintain our population growth. There may be some people that don't like the composition of the population growth, but tough, if it's for the greater good, then, and you can come in and you got some skills and you can contribute to keeping our country growing at a nice moderate pace where everybody has a nice life. More power to you. I don't care if we're all gray 100 years from now.
Elon has that concern where we're actually underpopulated as opposed to overpopulated. Yeah. And his reasoning is simple. You always need more people to produce more, right? You always got to keep it coming. You need to have people to replace the people who are currently here. If the birthing rate declines too far, there are not going to be enough jobs. There are not going to be enough people to fill the jobs that needs, and everything collapses. So I do think there's some merit to that, but it's like, okay, well, if you're so concerned about people having kids, make it more affordable and easier for people to have kids. Yeah. My dad's the oldest of 6 boys from the 50s to how was Uncle Matt to like 1969, let's say. So that 9 years, my grandparent had 6 kids. Find me a parent right now who can afford 6 kids in this.
Oh my gosh.
It's impossible.
Oh my gosh.
It's impossible.
It is.
People can't afford one kid.
Well, it's not impossible. At the beginning of Caddyshack, and when the caddy's like lives in a house, he's a big Catholic house with like 7 or 8 kids.
Yeah.
And he had to put all the money that he made in the jar for everybody else. That's what they're doing. That's what, if you're in a big family like that, that's exactly what you're doing.
You got the jar and you hide it in Marge's hair.
Yeah.
Well, even the Brady Bunch, right? The Brady Bunch, he was an architect or a lawyer?
He was an architect.
Architect. So he was an architect. Yeah. Wife didn't work, had a nanny at home, 6 kids on one salary. And that was like not unrealistic.
He's a hell of an architect.
Yeah. But that wasn't that crazy unrealistic for that kind of time. I think, did the mother work? I didn't watch the Brady Bunch that much.
I don't think, no, she was, sitting around cutting flowers and crap.
She had a
whatever TV moms did back then.
Had a knitting business on the side that was off camera. But boozing. But like that was like an average lifestyle back then. And people were like, that's just unbelievable now. But if you got hope, I got hope. So, and besides, AI is going to come in and the jobs aren't going to be there to begin with. So we'll finish this conversation off with Chat GPT. Russell, you are a professor. I'm sure you grade papers and have to deal with writing.
I do grade papers, and there's this thing called plagiarism check, where when people turn papers into me electronically, it automatically looks at it compared to papers that have been turned in all over the country, and I got a plagiarism score. It also looks at there are places you can go buy homework answers. Like there's this service called Chegg. So what I did was I had ChatGPT answer all of some essay questions I had a few weeks ago and uploaded them to Chegg.
Oh, you didn't.
I did.
Oh, you screwed the whole country.
So my plagiarism checker, it's only my homework. It's not anybody else's.
But still.
But I did that, and then I just waited to see, and nobody used it. But I really wanted to catch somebody.
Right.
My understanding is at some universities, and I don't know what our official deal is yet, but they've already said if you use it for anything like that, and turn it in as your work, you're out.
Expelled.
Now I don't know how you prove it, and I've gone through, academic. I've been on little academic committees when kids have done stupid things or whatever in the past. And I know how much is involved in, just giving someone an F if they appeal and say, I did not cheat, or try to appeal the decision. There's a lot that goes around that. Kicking somebody out of school, I can only imagine, how many hearings and.
Yeah. Well, they're using it as a scare tactic.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. So clearly you are against ChatGPT and these AI bots. So why?
Yeah.
Why?
I don't know. We're already losing our ability to have original thoughts for so many different reasons.
True.
And, every time somebody asks a question, are we going to just look at the computer and go, was Eleanor Roosevelt a lesbian, and get an answer? I don't know where that one came from, but
let's
but you know what I'm saying? Like somebody says, what was the score or whatever the other night? And you should remember the score of the game you were at the other night, and you go, hey, Alexa, what was the score of the Sox game last night? It's going to start to reach that point where, we're not using our brain anymore.
Well, I think we're pretty much already there. I think
we're getting there.
Critical thinking is lost on people. Like, this is something I'd love to talk. Like, I'm actually going to talk about in a few weeks with a guest of mine. He does like political TikToks, and he's incredible at it because he thinks very level-headed. People cannot think that two things can be true at the same time. It's very hard for people to think that's either one or the other, and they get into camps and teams. And I don't think AI is going to help that. But when it comes to college and teaching, and because at the end of the day, AI is a tool, right? Yeah. It's not going to be the end of the world. It's the people who use it could bring the end of the world. But colleges as an institution, what is the point of college?
I think at least with what I teach, there are things I taught today that will be used by the same students in 6 months in their jobs.
Right.
So I am teaching them, I really believe that I'm teaching a vocation.
Excellent.
I know it's, business. I guess business school is a vocational type of school,
right.
but that's, how I think about that one. If you start to deviate into some other majors, that's where you start to have some issues.
Okay. So let's keep to your major. So the point of a business major, your class, the point of your job as a professor is to prepare your kids for the job they're going to get out of school.
The tools and how they're going to use those tools in the job that they're going to get when they get out of school.
Right. So
think about it being like an apprenticeship.
Right. So that's my point. Whether you like it or not, and I'm going to pick on you because you're right in front of me, but this goes for any professor, any university out there. ChatGPT and AI is going to be one of those tools.
Oh, yeah. No, and you know what? My version of that tool was the
encyclopedia.
Yeah, the world books on the shelf. And, if it was, what color were dinosaurs? Like, go look up dinosaurs and read that. And then, and then write something that went through my brain based on what, I remember there was one kid that turned in a report and he plagiarized it so bad. The last paragraph was, see also green plants, brown plants. He actually did all the references at the end of his, he didn't think for himself at all, is the point. If I've got a question about what are the uses of duration, I don't have a problem with somebody putting in a chat GPT, what are the uses of duration, reading about it, and then turning around and answering the question. I really don't. So being able to list those off, ChatGPT, being able to tell you what they are, that's great, but you're going to need to be able to apply that information when you reach it, when you're out in the work world. And ChatGPT is not going to really be able to do that for you.
Well, that's going to come on an individual basis, right? You can bring the horse to water, right? You can't teach it to drink, yada yada yada. But if these jobs are going to be using ChatGPT, like say there's a job description, right? So you can use ChatGPT to use this, and they go, hey, I couldn't do that in school, I would have gotten expelled. They can't do that job anymore. And you as an educator is to get them prepared and use the tools for those jobs, especially if the jobs they're going into are going to be using the tool. So how do you balance that?
Well, I mean, I'm kind of give it to you. When I first took finance, we had to use these funny tables that would give us a factor to solve for a number. Now I put a command in Excel and I get the answer.
Right.
Now, when I do my homework, which was by hand when I was taking finance in college, I had to write out everything that I was doing. If I had done everything in a spreadsheet and turned it in, they would have said I was cheating.
Yeah.
You see what I'm kind of going with that?
Yeah, I think they would be wrong there too.
Yeah. I mean, well, they're teaching it the way they're supposed to teach it. Needless to say, I really try to avoid that one. But that's kind of my point. That's kind of the thing with ChatGPT. If you need it to look something up when you're doing your job, and you're able to interpret what you look up for your job, that's great. The ability to do that, hopefully you acquired it while you were in school.
Because I don't think ChatGPT is going to replace anyone's job. It's going to create a new job where people are required to use it to benefit the job that already exists. ChatGPT is not going to, on its own, do a job by itself. Someone has to use that job.
Like if you're a fact checker at, a magazine, and I assume they still have those. Well,
depends on magazine.
Okay. So at a higher end magazine, you have fact checkers. They quite possibly are using things like ChatGPT already. They probably were using Google.
Yeah, of course.
Before that. So they're going to use the latest tools at hand. It's probably going to make their jobs easier. You might be able to go from 4 to 3. Michael J. Fox gets the boot.
Yep.
So
I think there's ways that you can teach it and use it at a university that doesn't get rid of cheating to get that grade, to get that grade to just be an arbitrary thing of saying, hey, I learned something.
Well, there is a class that's being taught by an outgoing professor. He created it for one semester. He is actually teaching AI in business, and they are doing a lot with ChatGPT.
Yeah, because I do use it. I play around with it. My social posts, my YouTube descriptions. Let me tell you, Russell, I started this podcast in January of 2020. By December 2022, excuse me, by January 2022. December 2022, easy for me to say, it's been a long podcast. My views were just over 50,000 from me writing my own descriptions, with this, that, and the other. Since then, I am at 175,000. What's the difference? I started using ChatGPT in February.
Wow.
Yeah. Wow. Now,
That's fantastic.
I don't just copy and paste.
Yeah.
I use it to listen, I need keywords. I need hashtags. What's trending on? It can do all those things. I don't have the time. I just can't do. Right, but ChatGPT is never going to do that by itself. I have to learn and teach myself how to use the tool. Now, does that mean does that take away from the integrity of my podcast? Well,
no.
You can be the judge. Some people can say, yeah, I prefer your own voice. It's like, well, my view of it is listen, this is a way to get into the algorithm. This is a way for me to get seen. This is an invitation into the party. If my podcast sucks, guess what? I'm going to get kicked out of the party. Yeah. But I'm still in the party. Now, if a college
gives you a shot.
Yeah, it gives you a shot. But if a college is going to be like this, hey, listen, man, this is cheating. You can never use it ever, when the rest of the world is still using it, that to me is just another reason not to go to college.
Mm-hmm. Well, again, the actual application is the part that we do more and more of. I mean, when you start out your first semester in the Kelley School of Business, you do something called I-Core, which combines all the disciplines into one giant case study. So you pick up experience in I-Core, and I think when they interview for internships and then interview for jobs, they'll talk about what they did within I-Core as well. I haven't been included in it yet, so I don't know everything about how it works, but I know what the outcome is because I see that every year. And it's a full semester working in a group on something that is applicable to the real world.
All right. Excellent. All right, Russell. I'll drop the ChatGPT because we've been going for a little over an hour and just about hour and 12 minutes. But before we go, the final question of the Talking with Tarashuk podcast always goes to the guest. You have known me for a few years now, from behind the mic. Now you know me in front of the mic. Anything you've ever wanted to ask me, now is a chance. Gosh. If you got nothing, I'd like to pull this.
I do, but I'm going to allow you to plead the fifth.
All right, please ask it away.
How's your relationship with the person whose name starts with J?
Oh, Jill.
Yeah,
Jill.
Well,
I know. No, Jill. Sorry, Jill was a former guest on this podcast. I sent you that link. So Jill is actually a guest on the. I love working with Jill. So yeah,
I do too. I do too. I was just I've never worked with her the way that you do. Yeah. And I was just wondering. I wonder if she's like just come on. She seems cool. She seems cool whenever we're doing setup. But
Jill is like a big sister.
Okay, cool.
We have that kind of relationship where I can because we go on the road too. We covered. We were in Vegas twice. We were in Miami twice. And we're in another conference next week, and then wherever. So we're not at the conference. It's Jill and I at the hotel bar or whatever, just talking and shooting the shit.
She's great.
She's like one of the boys, right? She's amazing. She's an incredible boss, very thorough, and she gives me leeway. She loosens up my leash and lets me explore and play and do things on my own. But if I fuck up, she'll hit me over the head. Right, and then rein me back in. But that's good. Yeah. That's why I like from the manager. Listen, here's the playground. Here are the rules. Let me play. If I break the rules, hit me over the head. Yeah. So she's phenomenal. She knows my goals. My goals are her goals, and it's just two of us. Trade Talks is just the two of us. And it's a tight run shipping. We had 11 hits today. Because April's Financial Literacy Month. So yeah. My relationship with Jill is phenomenal, and as all my managers, which is kind of funny because all my managers in my professional life have all been women, and they've all been phenomenal. So that's just I guess it's just a great old coincidence. But that's a good question.
It is.
That's a good question.
Yeah. So
and very
I tried to dance around it as much as I could there.
Yeah,
poorly.
It's not a secret that I work for Trade Talks. That's my 9 to 5 job.
Yeah, well, it wasn't that part. It was the actual individual.
Oh.
I was trying to ask him.
actually talking about Jill. Well, yeah.
Yeah.
If
I
Jill
started to ask it, and I started, and I was like, well, I would ask him if we weren't being recorded, so you may as well just ask him now.
Yeah, if Jill sucked, I would plead the fifth.
So I kind of figured.
Luckily, Jill is the best. Jill, if you're watching, you're the greatest, and I know I'm the greatest too. All right, so that concludes our podcast. Anything you want to plug? Anything you want to share? I know you have a bunch of books out there. I think you have a new book coming out. I don't know. If you
I'm supposed to be finishing a book about Warren Buffett, but I got a little bit behind on a lot of things because of that. I had a bad incident and I was out of commission for a couple of weeks there.
Right.
So I'm behind on everything right now, and which means nothing is coming out anytime soon.
All right. So if you have anything you want to share, get a website, socials, people can get in touch with you. The floor is yours, my friend. Give it away.
Probably the easiest thing is on my Twitter, which is my full name, RussellRhoads. That's just the @ if you get a newscaster in Tampa that seems to keep getting DUIs or something like that, you've got the wrong Russell Rhoads. That's not me. I'm at the Kelley School of Business, but I think that's the one that I get mistaken for every once in a while. You scumbag! Yeah.
Amazing. Well, luckily, I don't know how I'm going to follow that up, but here we go. Luckily, there's only one Will Tarashuk, because ladies and gentlemen, this has been the Talking with Tarashuk podcast. My name is Will Tarashuk. T as in Thomas, ARASHUK. A big thank you to my guest, Russell Rhoads. Man, I have a lot of respect for a very smart man, and man, we'll be back on this podcast. My thing is once a quarter. If you want to find me, it's Talking with Tarashuk, T as in Thomas, ARASHUK, at Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube is Talking with Tarashuk. If you want to be a guest on the podcast, reach out to me via email, will@apspodcast.com. That's apspodcast.com. And let me know why. If you make me go, ooh, that's interesting, congratulations. You're going to be on the show. It's going to be a bunch of fun. You get copies of every piece of content I create with social copy with the help of ChatGPT. You can use them. You cannot use them however you want. My last guest, Desmond, used all of them, and that's why he was in the top 5 of all-time favorite podcasts. Down below in the description, I have a GoFundMe link. This podcast is 100% free, but it's not free to do it. So please help me out. Any donations you can give to your boy to help me buy a house and get married and build this business would be a great help. If not, enjoy the free content, you freeloader. I'll be back next week talking to someone. I don't know. I don't remember. I don't want to look it up. But until then, we'll see you there. But until then, y'all take care.